In this video, I just want to talk about a couple of things that I think every angler should consider before they go and purchase their next rod, whether that's a bait cast rod like this one or a spinning rod. There are a few things that I just don't think everyone always thinks about when it comes to purchasing it, and this is going to kind of impact the performance that that rod ends up having for you. Now, real quick before we get into the video, this one's brought to you by my apparel company, Finn Fishing. I have USA made sun shirts, one of the only ones out there on the market not made overseas. And right now, if you purchase one of these shirts, you can get one of my bass hats for 50% off. It's kind of a combo package deal. And I'm running this sale for just the rest of March 2024. So we have a few days left of this sale. All you got to do is add the shirt you like to cart, add the hat that you like to cart. It will automatically discount at checkout. It is the best way to help support this channel. All right, let's talk about rods. Now, one of the biggest things that I think is a little bit of a myth out there is that there is a perfect rod for the baits that we throw. And the reason that I say that is if you listen to a lot of anglers talk about what rod they like to use for certain lures, you will typically see a fairly wide variety, even when it comes down to the exact same lure. For example, here is a jerkbait. My absolute favorite rod to use on a jerkbait is this Arc Tharp Series one-eyed jack rod. This rod is 6'9" in length, and it is very flimsy. Like, there is a lot of give here. It has a very more parabolic bend than a lot of rods. Now, if you look at one of the best jerkbait fishermen in the world, Kevin Van Dam, he throws a rod that is similar in length at 6'10", but his rod is almost more like a spinnerbait rod. And I know this because I've picked it up. It's like a medium heavy, and it's a more of a fast action rod, a really different style rod. And so the thing is that, hey, is Kevin Van Dam right? Am I right? I think this is what people have to consider when it comes to the rods. Now, I will always say that Kevin Van Dam is right, but the reason that that rod that he uses doesn't work for me is actually for a number of reasons. One, I tend to set the hook really hard. I just do. It is natural to me. And this is something that I think everybody should consider when they go to buy a rod is their hook set. Do you set the hook hard? Are you one of those guys that just likes to crank into them, kind of like me? If you are that type of person, then you are going to want to use rods that are a little bit more parabolic in action. Not necessarily a lighter power rod, just more parabolic, because if you are setting the hook really, really hard and you're using line, whether that's braid, maybe it's fluorocarbon, there has to be some give somewhere in that system, or you're going to rip the hooks out of a lot of fish. And or if you're using like a heavy rod, maybe with a Texas rig, you're going to rip holes in that fish's mouth, and that's going to allow that fish to get off when it shakes its head above the surface of the water. And this is really, really important because you are, like I said, you're going to listen to a lot of guys talk about the same baits. They're going to have different rods and different lengths and different actions that all work, but they work for them because of the way that they set the hook, because of the way that they fight a fish. That's really, really important to understand. I think it's one of the most overlooked things that guys don't understand. For example, when it comes to flipping a jig, there's a lot of guys out there that like a heavy power, fast action rod, something that has a lot of backbone. Again, I set the hook really hard. And I still like a heavy power rod a lot of times, but I like rods that have more give to them, more parabolic action to them. Now, if you do not set the hook that hard, maybe, and look, guys, you do not have to set the hook hard. Let me be very clear. Especially in today's age with how good hooks are, with how we all use a lot of fluorocarbon line these days. Back in the day, guys, you had not good hooks, and most guys were using monofilament, and monofilament tends to have more stretch than lines like fluorocarbon. So sometimes you had to have stiffer rods, longer rods to really pick up the stretch that you are going to have with that line to be able to drive a more dull hook into a fish. Nowadays, with the technology we have with fluorocarbon line with the sharpest hooks out there, you do not need to set the hook hard. So am I saying setting the hook hard is wrong? I'm saying no, that it's not wrong. You do not have to set the hook hard, but you do have to critique your tackle to your hook set. And I've literally said the same thing now for like 3 minutes, that's the exact same thing, but I just really want to drive this home with you. I like to use fluorocarbon line. I don't use monofilament. So I'm not going to get as much give using monofilament or using fluorocarbon as I would monofilament. So it has to come in my rod. So when you go to buy the next rod, make sure that you think about that. Make sure you take that into consideration. Now, the next thing that I do want to talk about is treble hooks in general, because there's a lot of baits out there on the market that have treble hooks, and I truly believe that you will catch way more fish on a bait that has treble hooks with rods that have more parabolic bends to them, rods that are more of a slow action or a moderate action. And I have seen this with all of your baits, including baits like glide baits. A lot of guys will pick up baits like they're heavy baits, couple ounces in weights. And if you're a beginner or you don't know much about glide baits, you may just pick up, your flipping stick or a rod that's pretty heavy power in a fast action. That type of rod is going to cause you to lose a lot of fish on baits like this. The same thing applies to baits like a Whopper Plopper or a Berkeley Chapo style baits. When those things came out on the market and they just blew up, a lot of guys, even professional anglers, were using, braided line, and they were using big rods, big fast action rods. But again, that is a treble hooked bait. And I think over the course of time, you have seen a lot of guys start to go to more of those parabolic bending rods. Again, because they're treble hooks. And typically, if you're fishing a bait with treble hooks of any sort, it is, especially if they're multiple treble hooks like this. Baits like a mag draft, swim bait, or a harness style swim bait that only have one treble hook, that's a little bit different, because those baits aren't typically, those are like on a soft plastic bait versus a hard plastic bait. The hard plastic bait with treble hooks typically are the ones that you tend to lose a lot of fish on. And I really believe it's because people use too fast of an action with that rod. Having a more moderate bending rod is going to help you to catch a lot more fish. And I think that that's really, really important, because you might hear someone say, hey, for that Whopper Plopper, just pick up a 7'6" flip and stick and 50-pound braid and just go to town. You're going to catch some fish that way. You're going to lose some fish that way as well. And I'm just being 100% honest with you. Even if you don't set the hook that hard, the thing is with Whopper Ploppers and braid is that when a fish jumps, if you have a stiff rod and he jumps, he is going to be able to throw that lure so easily, because there is nothing that is allowing that fish to have some give. There is nothing there. If you have that more parabolic bend, it has more give. You have that big bend in the rod. When that fish shakes its head, that bend is just kind of absorbing that bait going all over. It's keeping tension on that bait, which keeps the hooks in that fish's mouth. Okay, that was a mouthful. Guys, I hope you understand your rods and some things that you should consider before you purchase your next ones. If you guys enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Also, you can click this link right here to watch my most recent video. Also, click on Fin Fishing if you want to help support the channel. I'll see you guys in the next one. Well, tomorrow.